All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep, really deep, into one of the most extreme places humans have ever dared to live a military submarine. I mean, think about it. It's basically a sealed steel tube, totally cut off from the rest of the world for months on end. So, what do you think is the most dangerous part of a submarine? Your mind probably goes straight to the obvious stuff, right? The torpedoes, maybe the nuclear reactor, or just the insane crushing pressure of the ocean that's just inches from your face. But what if I told you the deadliest component is something you'd never guess? Yep, the toilet. I'm not kidding. Back in World War II, a German U-boat, the U-1206, was actually sunk because its captain messed up with a super complex, high-pressure toilet. One wrong move, and bam, seawater flooded the sub, mixed with the batteries, and created deadly chlorine gas. They had no choice but to surface, where they were immediately spotted and destroyed. And that little story, it pretty much sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. On a sub, there's literally zero margin for error. Okay, so let's get into it. The first and, honestly, the most constant battle for a submariner isn't against some enemy ship. Nope, it's against the submarine itself. Specifically, the relentless fight for just a little bit of personal space. And when I say fight for space, I mean it. The reality of this confinement is, well, it's pretty stark. The average crew member gets about 20 square feet of personal space. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that's a quarter of the space given to an inmate in a typical prison cell. Let that sink in. A prisoner has 4 times the personal space. This quote just nails it. Privacy? Forget about it. That's a luxury you left on the surface. Your personal space pretty much ends at your own shoulders. You are always bumping into your crewmates. I mean, can you imagine? It's the perfect recipe for intense claustrophobia. And this crazy lack of space leads to some creative solutions for some very basic human needs. Let's talk about sleep, or more accurately, the lack of it. So here's the deal. On a lot of these subs, there are more people than there are beds. Simple as that. Take the USS Missouri, for instance. It's got a crew of 135, but only 94 bunks. So what do? You use a system called hot bunking. And just look at the cycle. It's absolutely relentless. Your shift ends, you head to your bunk, but guess what? Someone's in it. You wake them up, they get out, and you immediately slide into the bunk that they just warmed up with their body heat. That's why it's called hot bunking. Sleep isn't about rest, it's just part of the 24/7 machine. And these bunks, they're basically coffins, so tight you can't even sit up in them. You just slide in and slide out. So, okay, the physical challenges are obviously huge, but for a lot of these sailors, the biggest, most dangerous war isn't happening outside the sub. It's fought right inside their own head. I mean, just think about the psychological strain. It's constant. You go for months, without seeing sunlight, no real contact with your family. Your body's internal clock gets totally scrambled because there's no day and no night. And all the while, you're trapped with the same walls, the same smells, and the same faces day in and day out. It's a recipe for anxiety and depression. So how do you keep from going crazy? Well, the submarine basically has to trick your brain. It's pretty clever, actually. The lighting system mimics a day-night cycle. During the day, you get this natural hued light. But for the night shifts, everything switches to this dim red light. It's a signal to your brain that, hey, it's time to try and rest. All right, so we've talked about the human challenges. But what about the really fundamental stuff? How do you even create a world you can live in when you're sealed inside a metal tube, hundreds of feet underwater? Let's start with the most basic thing, breathing. How do you breathe for months inside a sealed tube? I mean, you can't just pack enough oxygen tanks for 130 people for that long. There's no room. Plus, it would be incredibly dangerous. So you've got to do the next best thing. You make your own air. And we're talking about a lot of oxygen. Every single day, a submarine has to generate something like 78,000 liters of it. To pull that off, it has to become its own little self-sustaining planet. And here's how they do it. This is basically the life support triangle. First, for oxygen, they take seawater and use a process called electrolysis to split it into hydrogen and, you guessed it, breathable oxygen. But then you have to deal with the air you breathe out. So second, the air is constantly being cleaned by scrubbers that pull out all the toxic CO2. And third, for fresh water, well, they make that from seawater too, using reverse osmosis to filter it. It's an incredible system. The crazy thing is, They are surrounded by an endless ocean, trillions of gallons of water, and yet every single drop of fresh water is this precious manufactured thing. So the discipline is extreme. If you're lucky enough to get a shower, it might be limited to just 60 seconds, 1 minute. That's it. Okay, so surviving is one thing, but you've got to keep the crew fueled up to operate this thing at peak performance, which brings us to food and how you deal with what comes after. You know, people say that food is maybe the single biggest morale booster on a submarine. Makes sense, right? To deal with all the stress, sailors actually eat 4 meals a day. They even have this late night meal called midrats. And the best part? Since there's no real storage space, food is just everywhere. It's packed under beds, it's lining the hallways, you're literally living inside the pantry. But what goes in must come out. And remember what I said at the beginning about the toilet? This is why. Getting rid of waste isn't just a flush, it's a high-stakes tactical operation. You have to follow the procedure perfectly, because if you make one mistake in that valve sequence, like opening the outer valve to the sea before the inner one is sealed, the ocean comes rushing in. It could sink the entire sub in an instant. Every single flush is a life-or-death procedure. And that really brings us full circle, doesn't it? The technology, the systems, they can be almost perfect. But the one thing you can never fully account for, the one truly unpredictable variable, it's always the human inside the machine. This story, wow, it's a tragic illustration of the ultimate risk. So in 1944, the USS Tang fires its last torpedo at a Japanese ship. But something goes wrong. A tiny mechanical failure in the torpedo's guidance system. Instead of going straight, it starts to turn and turn until it completes a full circle. And less than 2 minutes after it was launched, it slams right back into the USS Tang, sinking the very submarine that fired it. So you see, from a simple toilet valve to a tiny rudder on your own weapon, the smallest mistake, the tiniest error, it carries the ultimate price. The real battle for survival down there isn't just against some other ship. It's a constant, never-ending struggle against your environment, against the incredibly complex machine you call home, and ultimately, against the limits of your own mind. Which leaves you with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? In a world where there is absolutely no escape, what is the real cost of a single mistake? It's something submariners have to live with, every second of every day, deep in the silent, unforgiving worlds beneath the waves.